Mayday, here. 82, we have smoke in the cabin.
Contact, pilot maintain.
Good evening and welcome to the April 2023 session of Galactic Terrors, the online reading series that scours the known universe for scary stories, strange tales, weird horror, and all sorts of literary oddities from the most imaginative authors writing in a variety of fascinating genres. I am co-host James Chambers, and with me tonight is Carol Gyzander.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to April. We're looking into spring here in the U.S.
It's spring. It's starting to feel a little bit more like summer. I think we almost hit 90 today here in
it was where I was. I am not used to this.
But hopefully you can sit back, relax, and cool off if it's warm where you are with our stellar lineup of readers tonight. We have Gary Frank, KATHERINE SILVA, and John G. Hartness joining us to share their stories and answer your burning questions.
How did you do that? Yes, exactly. No, it's fun, and one of the reasons that we picked these three authors is that the three of them, as well as Jim and I, were all down at AuthorCon, which is the Scares That Care event, just a few weekends ago. We thought, it'll be kind of fun to chat about that as we go along. So it's a very cool event that benefits a very good cause, the Scares That Care.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit group that runs the convention as a fundraiser to raise money for cancer and burn victims and to help out in any way they can to relieve some financial burdens. And along the way, they throw a really amazing, fun convention where authors and readers get to hang out and connect and talk shop and talk writing and talk reading and have a great time.
Mm-hmm. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, the hotel was lovely, and I sold a lot of books, and I may have bought a lot of books. But yeah, when we bring everybody back on at the end, we can talk about that a little bit, and that'll be something fun to look forward to. Briefly.
Excellent. Okay, we'll talk some more. And I think, Carol, you reminded me that this month is National Poetry Month. April is National Poetry Month, and as part of that, the HWA is opening 2 submissions for which number are we up to? Well, I forget which number. It might be a 10 or 11, the HWA Poetry Showcase for dark horror poetry. And submissions open for that on April 15th, and they will be open through March 15th.
Through May 15th. May 15th.
Yeah, May 15th. You can see how well I'm navigating the calendar these days. I'm going backwards. I'm like Benjamin. But
I thought you looked younger. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's it. And like Brad Pitt too, right? There's just but we encourage you, if you're interested in poetry and horror poetry, to definitely check out the past HWA poetry showcases. And thank you, Amy Greck. I see in the comments you are reminding us that this will be showcase number 10. So this has been going on for quite a while, and there's a lot of great poetry published in the poetry showcase, and a lot of great editors and poets have worked on it over the years.
Yes, terrific. Oh, that's very exciting. And I think it's going to be cool seeing what comes up next. You know, I always love seeing it's a wonderful venue for dark stuff. So that's really cool. Cool. And I'll also put this over into the link just because I like to do that. It's open for HWA members to submit, and the link to submittable is on their social media, and you can also see it at AngelaSmith.com, Angela Y. Smith. She's one of the put together people. So That's
Yes.
terrific. Now they're also doing something on the HWA site, which is horror.org, for those who aren't familiar with it. They're doing a daily interview with some of the poets who've been in the past collections and who are horror kind of poets. And one of our HWA New York members, Teal James Glenn, was in there a little bit ago. Let me see if I have the link for that too.
Very good. Yeah, I saw that post. I haven't had a chance to read the interview yet, but I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, I think it's fun to see the people asking questions about your work and seeing how folks answer it and all, because everybody has a very different approach, which I think is very cool. So cool.
Yeah.
So Jim, there's some StokerCon news out now, right, about the virtual registrations?
Sure. So for StokerCon 2023, virtual registrations have officially opened. And you can go ahead, if you're not able to attend the in-person event in Pittsburgh in June, you can sign up for the virtual experience, which will include not only a lot of programming live streamed from Pittsburgh, but will also include on-demand programming that is unique to the virtual convention experience, including author readings and panels and other things. So it's a great way to attend StokerCon, even if you can't make it to Pittsburgh in June. And you have the options to just register for the basic membership for virtual, or you can register for a level that gets you a copy of the StokerCon souvenir anthology, which is usually given out in person. But we also have had a program in place now for a couple of years to mail that out to our virtual participants so that they get the book. And we usually get that out to them. I would say the majority of virtual attendees get their anthologies within a day or two of the convention starting. So they either get it right before or right as the convention is starting. So it's always a neat little thing to have that show up just as you start checking out panels and attending events.
Oh, that's cool. And one other thing I noticed on the registration page, there's also an option for those who are attending in person to also get the virtual registration, which I believe gives you a period of time after the convention to watch some of the things you might have missed, because all the programming there is so good. I want to go to everything, and there's like 5 things at once. So.
That's true. If you're going in person and you add the hybrid option on, you'll get a period of time after the convention where you can view all of the recorded panels that were live streamed. So if you ever have had that dilemma at a convention, there are 3 panels I want to go to and they're all at the same time, this will allow you to at least get to one or two of the others. So
that sounds terrific. Yeah.
So I want to just thank our audience for joining with us tonight. Thank you so much. If you're coming back, we're glad to have you back. If you're here for the first time, welcome to Galactic Terrors. We hope you're going to have a lot of fun, and we ask that you like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're watching us on Facebook, just go ahead and like. It helps us spread the word about Galactic Terrors, which takes place monthly. Every second Thursday of the month. So you can always just kind of check our YouTube channel or Facebook page on the second Thursday of the month, or you can go ahead and sign up for notifications. Or you can also sign up for our newsletter, which Carol does a fantastic job of sending out. It is not spammy at all. It goes out twice a month.
Or sometimes where months are very crazy, like this month, we get it out once a month.
Once a month, so even less spammy. So you don't have to worry about us inundating you with news. But that is a good way to keep up on what we're going to be doing in the future, who's coming up on the next Galactic Terrors, and take part in book giveaways that we sometimes do.
Cool. And I just put the link in there for anybody who hasn't signed up. You're welcome to join us on the newsletter. Thanks so much. Well, I'm kind of dying to hear from our readers, Jim. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's time.
I think it's time. Yeah. All right. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Gary Frank. Gary is the author of Forever Will You Suffer, a supernatural, time-shifting tale of unrequited love gone horribly wrong. Institutional Memory, a story of cosmic terrors in the corporate workplace. And The Thing in the Woods, a cryptid tale of the hazards of camping in the woods. He's the co-editor with Mary Sangiovanni of Dark Territories, the anthology from the Garden State Horror Writers. He's also written several short stories, including Stay Here, published in the 2005 Garden State Horror Writers Anthology Dark Notes from New Jersey. As a Jerseyite, I love this. He's also one of the associate editors of Space and Time magazine. And you can find out more about Gary at authorgaryfrank.com. Gary?
Welcome, all my friends, to the show that never ends. I am indeed Gary Frank. I will be reading a snippet from my newest novel, The Thing in the Woods. So let's get you caught up, because I'm not reading from page 1 because nothing really happens there. So we have Rich and Kara, who are married. We have Max and Allison, who are married. And Kara and Allison are sisters. As they're heading towards this campground, Rich learns that there's a wild man in the woods, allegedly. That first night they're there, they experience someone throwing pebbles at their cabin. When they go out to check, no one is there. The next day, they find a hut while they're out taking a hike. They find a hut with various bones on the ground around it. So it kind of sets them off a little bit. So this is chapter 5, called Hunting High and Low. If you've read the book, you will probably notice that all my chapter headings are song titles, because that's how I roll. Anyway, here we are, chapter 5. They're coming back from a hike. So, when Rich and Kara arrived back at the cabin, Max stood outside with the 2 rifles. Here. He handed the Remington to Rich. We're going hunting. No, you're not. Allison stood behind him in the cabin doorway. What's going on? Rich asked, looking from Max to Allison. On the way back, someone was following us. I don't need no damn stalker ruining my camping trip. Max was just pissed. We're going to confront this guy and make sure he understands what's what. With guns? Kara asked. Are you crazy? Max glared at Kara. It's called a deterrent. Kara turned to Rich. Rich, you're not going with him, are you? At least leave the rifle here. You afraid Rich is going to shoot himself? Kara's next words were cold and sharp. I'm afraid he's going to shoot you. Max opened his mouth, but then closed it. You want to go play cowboy, Kara said. That's fine. Just do it without the guns. Serious, I don't want you shooting someone accidentally. You're just like your sister, Max said, scrutinizing Kara. There's nothing to worry about. We'll be fine. And if we put a little fear into one of our neighbors so they leave us alone, all the better. The 2 women looked at Rich for a level-headed response to this obviously unhinged man. We'll go talk to him, Rich said. It'll be fine. Safety's on, right? Of course. Max checked the safety on the Nosler. All good. We'll be back. Rich went to kiss Kara, but she stepped back. Try not to get yourself killed. Come on, Rich. Max headed into the forest behind the cabins. We'll cut through the woods to get to the other campsites. I don't want to take the road and have anyone spot us. Rich nodded. We're just going to talk, right? Of course. Unless they get out of hand and we have to protect ourselves. Max scowled at Rich. I'm serious, Rich. I know you and Kara don't like guns, but if this comes down to us and them, it's going to be us. Understand me? Clear. How do you even know who it is? For all we know, the people from Cabin 8 were out walking and spotted us. Maybe they were following you back to the cabins. He checked his phone. 11:15. If it was them, why didn't they say hello? I kept checking behind us, but neither of us saw anyone. That means whoever it was didn't want to be seen. Why do you think that is? Rich shrugged. I have no idea. Max led them on the silver trail until they came to the waterfall. Bones still lay scattered by the hut. Had he expected someone to clean them up? It didn't look like anyone had been back since they'd discovered it. What are we doing here? Rich asked, not sure he liked where this was going. It wasn't any camper who followed us. It was whoever lives there. He pointed at the waterfall with the Nosler. What? Rich couldn't believe what Max thought. You think there's someone living there and they were following you? You know how? No. He shook his head, but at the same time, he knew exactly what Max had experienced, and it had led him here as well. The wild man in the woods. Rich, I'd never experienced anything like the sensation I felt when that thing was following us. Yes, thing. The hairs on my arms were standing up. He held his arms out, like they are now. Branches snapped off to their left. Both men turned. Rich saw nothing. Was that a man moving through the woods? His heart kicked. It's him, the man in the woods. Did you see that? Max's voice was filled with excitement. Come on! Max rushed back to where the 2 trails met and then off the trail in pursuit of the shadow. Rich trembled with anticipation before chasing after Max and whatever he thought he saw. He'd only caught a glimpse of a tall, bulky biped shape that had to be a man, though his first impression was of something much larger, way over 6 feet, closer to 7. His eyes must have tricked him. What did it look like to you? Max hurried through the trees. I don't know. He was tall and dark. Not handsome. The ground sloped down and away from the trail into an endless forest, thick with trees and random boulders. Max ran fast through the heavily wooded area, heedless of decaying branches, tree roots, or rocks. Rich followed as best he could, jumping over roots and fallen tree limbs, careful not to step wrong or he'd twist his ankle or worse. Max turned to the right and kept going. Do you see him? Rich asked. It had to be the survivalist in some kind of camouflage outfit. The man the gas station attendant saw that maybe wasn't a man at all, but some kind of creature. I think so. I'm not sure. I thought he went this way. Ahead in the woods, a liquid shadow slipped through the birches and pines, the oaks and maples. Of course he did, Rich thought. This was his home, and he knew every tree, every place to step to move as fast as possible. Rich lost his bearings, and he hoped Max had a compass because he'd left his at the cabin. I see him, Max shouted. What's he? Rich's foot caught on a root that sent him sprawling. He hit the ground hard, but somehow managed to hold on to the Remington. Max was several yards to his right behind a tree, breathing hard. The survivalist stood about 50 feet in front of them, nothing but a shadow among the trees. The air reeked of compost and skunk. It came from the man who probably wanted to smell bad to keep people away from him. There! Rich whispered loud as he could and pointed to where Rich stared. I see him. He's tall. Rich's heart beat fast in his ears. Adrenaline raced through him, keeping him ready to fight or fly, depending on what the guy did. Rich trembled as he laid on the ground. Judging by the trees, the man was taller than anyone he'd seen. Close, if not over 7 feet tall. It must be that survivalist, Max said between gasps for breath. Are you all right? Rich kept his eyes on the man, who couldn't be a man, but had to because there was no other explanation that made sense. Rich admired the thing. It had no responsibilities, no job, no house to maintain. Maybe it had a family, but it had no bills or anything. It could go where it wanted and do whatever it chose without needing permission or making sure society was okay with his plans. It was free of all the BS humans were chained to. This is what he was thinking now? Jeez. You lucky son of a bitch, he thought. He was certain it was intelligent and lived by more than simple instinct. Rich doubted he could give up his life to live in the wild like this guy did. Just need to catch my breath, Max wheezed. What should we do? Rich wasn't sure if the man saw either of them. He watched the guy carefully. He wouldn't shoot him. Better to talk first and try to come to an amicable agreement. You go your way, we'll go ours. Shooting him was out of the question. Let's see what he does, Max whispered back. He turned to the shadow. Who are you? He shouted. Were you throwing pebbles at our cabin last night? The shadow didn't answer. It stood there in all its 7-foot-tall glory, observing them. Is that your hut back there? Max asked. Look, we don't want any trouble. We're just here to do some hiking and drinking. We won't bother you, all right? The huge man stood still, and for several long seconds, Rich lost sight of him. Where the hell had he gone? Then he reappeared closer, maybe 20 feet now, as if a blank window had passed in front of the man, obscuring him from view. Rich tried getting a perspective on him by checking the low branches of nearby trees. When he realized the man was closer to 8 feet tall, he knew this wasn't a man at all, unless it was some former basketball player who decided to become a recluse in those woods. That's not a human, Rich said. It's too big. It could crush him if it wanted to. Its hands were immense. It had too much bulk to it. If that was indeed the thing's body and not just a coat or something, it had to weigh several hundred pounds. Rich was running out of possibilities to call that thing a man. Everything he thought vanished as he stared at it. The breeze shifted and the stink of sulfur, feces, and compost wafted over them. God, what a stench! Max frowned and wrinkled his nose. He held his hand over his mouth. Doesn't he ever bathe? It was the same stink from the previous night. This creature had been at their cabin. The forest grew silent. The creature took a tentative step toward them. That was no bear. The legs were too long, as were the exaggerated human-like arms. Get ready to fire, Max whispered. Why? Bringing rifles had been a mistake. Rich knew that now and wished he had known as much back at the cabin. He had no intentions of shooting this magnificent creature. It's amazing, Max. It's coming this way, Max spoke fast. Right for us. Rich didn't think it was coming as fast as Max suggested. He wouldn't fire at it. Maybe he'd fire a warning shot over it. It shambled one step at a time toward them, its head cocked to one side as if curious about them. Rich, it's getting too close. It was still a distance away. They could make a break for it if they had to. They were out here to talk to a man, but this wasn't a man, and Rich had no idea what he should do other than haul his ass back to the cabin, pack everything up, grab the women, and leave. He'd phone the office when they got to the main road. Let the Rangers handle this behemoth. Not a bear, Rich whispered. No shit, Watson. It was a huge, hairy human, and only one thing fit that description. But it was an urban legend that couldn't exist, and yet Rich had seen an episode or two of Hunting Bigfoot, and from all the interviews and sightings, knew this thing was one of them. Yet no one had ever mentioned a Sasquatch attacking humans. They were supposed to be overly shy and wanted nothing to do with people. A wild man living in the woods, eluding even the best trackers. Yet here it was, coming toward them, one slow step at a time. Thank you. If you want to know what happens next, get the book, people. It's an excellent book. It's short. It's a novella. And I tell you what, for a fee of $100, I'll come to your house and read it. That would include airfare if you're out of the area. Thanks.
All right. Good advice, Gary. Yes. Get the book. That was great. Thank you so much. Let's see. And we do have a quick question, I think. Let's see. This is from Teal. And I have a question for you, too. But we'll see what Teal has to say first, because Teal is in Bigfoot, in the Bigfoot territory as a 7 foot, close to 7 foot tall person. You need not fear him. But seriously, do you start with character, setting, plot, or feeling? The feeling you were going for with your horror fiction?
Seems to me what happens is different novels appear differently. When I did Forever Will You Suffer, it was a fiction novel, and it became a horror novel because I changed the stalker into something else. And once I figured out what that was, it came pretty easily. I generally come up with a situation, I think, and then create characters out of that. What I did with Thing in the Woods is I tried harder to spend a lot of time with the characters, developing them and their relationships together, because there's an issue of domestic violence between Max and his wife. And so Kara says, we're going camping, you're talking to Max, I'm pulling Allison aside, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. And the force of nature, that's Bigfoot, is kind of an added, I gave it away, kind of an added benefit of what's going on while they're camping.
Very cool. And that's actually what I was wondering, is there seems to be a sort of surge in popularity of cryptid stories, cryptid movies, cryptid books, horror stories involving cryptids. And you're writing in this one about, as you just gave away, one of the greatest of them all, probably the most popular one, the one that I'm sure you and I and others of our generation grew up more certain that it did exist than that it didn't. But what's your take on that? What do you think is behind this kind of renewed interest in cryptozoology, cryptids, and these legendary monsters?
I think people are fascinated by the unknown. I think I personally want to believe there's things out there that we don't know about. Of course, I'm going camping with the Boy Scouts this weekend, so if I don't return, you know why. But I think we like the idea of imagining things beyond what we know, beyond the mundanity of life, things that are out there somewhere, whether it's Mantis Man or the Lizard Man or the Skunk Ape down south and that sort of thing. Because I got to tell you, from my perspective, dealing with the day-to-day is rather crazy on its own. So having something like, look, we can sit down and hear about Bigfoot banging, tree trunks on tree trunks to communicate is fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting. You kind of touched on this in the piece that you read. There's the violent Bigfoot and the non-violent Bigfoot that we see in film and fiction. And it seems to go back and forth, where Bigfoot is sympathetic or Bigfoot is the threat, or I guess in a few cases, Bigfoot is the comic relief. But it definitely, so do you see in some way that maybe this is really just applicable to Bigfoot, but there's a certain attractiveness to the Bigfoot existence?
Yes, Absolutely. I mean, there's such a crop of podcasts, Monsters Among Us and such like that, and a ton of Bigfoot podcasts as well. And the Monsters Among Us branches out more into various cryptids with phone calls and emails of things that have encountered. But I think we like the legend of Bigfoot a lot. I mean, there were so many shows and hunting Bigfoot. That, I always get a kick out of these people on these shows that go into the wild. We're going to find Bigfoot. And the minute something shows up on their heat sensors, they freak out. Like, isn't that what you're there for? And yet there it is. But yeah, up in Alaska, in the wilds of Alaska, the large man known as Yeti or Bigfoot bangs tree trunks together and frightens people. And it's just a terrible scene. And there have been attacks, but, nobody's come back with like missing arms or anything. So I got to kind of wonder about that. You people out there in the studio audience may know better than I.
Well, that's a good segue to another question from our audience. Chris Ryan is asking how much research you did on Bigfoot and how did you decide which info was most reliable?
What I did was I read a number of articles. I indeed sat through a number of shows. I talked to Derek Haynes over at Monsters Among Us. And he provided a lot of his shows provided a lot of good material because I was going for sensory things. The skunk smell is something that a lot of people have experienced.
Mm-hmm.
The pebbles thrown at cabins is another thing people have experienced. So I wanted to go for that more than trying to wrangle all the different Bigfoot shows and because as mysterious as Bigfoot is, it should stay that way. Even in the novel, we don't get up close and personal. Well, a lot. So I figured, if I could find 3 or 4 sources that agreed, which is how I usually do my research, to make sure that there's a corroboration and not just take one person out in the wilds of Alaska who, saw his cousin actually dressed up in a Bigfoot costume loping through the woods, and knowing that there are other sources out there that corroborate that, then that's something that I tend to, yes, let's go with that.
Excellent. Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Gary. The book is The Thing in the Woods.
Yes.
And we'll have you back at the end to talk about what you have coming up next.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All right. Our next reader is KATHERINE SILVA. KATHERINE is a Maine horror author, a connoisseur of coffee, and a victim of cat shenanigans. She is a 2-time Maine Literary Award finalist for speculative fiction and a member of the Horror Writers of Maine, the Horror Writers Association, and the New England Horror Writers Association. KATHERINE is also editor-in-chief of Strange Wilds Press. Her latest works, Orchards, Hallowed Oblivion, and Dan and Andy's Scary Oak Holiday, or is that Scary Oaky Holiday? KATHERINE can correct me on that later. Are all novelettes within the Wild Dark universe and are now available wherever books are sold. A sequel, The Wild Fall, is due out in August 2023, and you can find out more about KATHERINE at KATHERINESILVAauthor.com. Please welcome KATHERINE Silva.
Hi there. I'm KATHERINE Silva, Cat for short. And yes, you were right. It is Scarioki. I am going to be reading from 2 of my books today. The first is The Wild Dark, which is book 1 in the Wild Oblivion series. And the series is about an ex-cop who's trying to escape from a purgatory forest that's taking over the world while being haunted by the ghost of her ex-partner. We're going to start at chapter 6. So Liz, who is our main character, has gone into the New England woods to get away after the death of her best friend and her partner. She's been out in the woods for about a month and has started to see his ghost. But she's not really sure if it's just her or if it's actually something else. So I'm going to jump into chapter 6. I opened my eyes, my mind scrambling to detach myself from the world of sleep. I peeled back the covers and stood, backing against the wall as I tried to remember where I was. The pops and crackles of the fire in the den comforted my ears, and my pounding heart slowed. The cabin. I was here, and Brody was not. A sound pierced the air. Not any sound. A scream. I reached for the baseball bat, leaning against the wall where I'd left it after last night's disturbance. I slunk to the window. Everything was black. The only shapes I could make out were the edges of the bushes and the treetops, branches crossing one another in natural filigree. The scream died off into the night. The tension in my shoulders subsided. That hadn't come from nearby. It was distant. Then, like a warning siren, it rose up again through the trees, closer now. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, only that it was primal and unnatural. Goosebumps rose all over my skin. I grabbed a flashlight from a shelf by the door and flicked it on, a beam piercing the darkness. Throwing my clothes and a coat on, I hesitantly opened the door. Bitter cold nipped at me within seconds of stepping out. Despite wanting to slip back inside, I closed the door behind me and then held up the bat defensively. The scream tore up into the air mere feet in front of me. Panic skittered across my brain. I scanned the snow-covered trees as I walked to the edge of the deck. What the hell was I doing out here? Go back inside. I couldn't. That scream uncoiled a thread of recklessness in me, something I hadn't sensed ever since I'd lost Brody. Something was out there. Who or whatever it was probably needed help. Something crashed through the brush off to my far right. I swept the flashlight across the driveway into the trees, but moments too late to catch anything. The wind whistled against the cabin and shook the trees. The sound of sticks and scrub crackling was still getting closer. "Who's out there?" I called, my voice barely projecting. The sounds in the underbrush suddenly ceased. My nerve wavered. What if this was the person who'd been walking on my deck last night? The crashing in the thicket commenced again, still growing closer, louder, greater. It didn't sound like a person. It sounded much bigger. I glanced over my shoulder at the cabin door. Screw this. It wasn't worth losing my life thinking I was doing it for a good cause. If a bear lumbered out of those trees, I wasn't going to fight it. I turned on my heel for the door and wrenched the knob, but it stuck. I jiggled it, threw my shoulder into the wood, hoping for it to give way. The door wouldn't budge. Oh, shit. I'd locked myself out. The car. I could still get there. I fished around in my coat pocket for the keys, my fingers swimming in warm, empty wool. I'd left them inside. Idiot. I backed up against the door. What do I do? The back door. There was a spare key back there. The owner of the cabin had mentioned it in his email. I slipped to the opposite end of the deck, staying focused on the woods. I was afraid to look away, knowing the owner of those terrifying screams could appear at any moment. Once I made it down the stairs onto the snow, I stole toward the back entrance. My breath was heavy in my ears. The squeal of my boots through the fresh snow was ear-piercing. I couldn't hear anything behind me. I didn't want to. I rounded the corner of the cabin. A small staircase led up to the back door. In a box leaning up against the side of the building was a heap of rusted coffee cans, barely protected from the snow. I lifted the mat at the top of the steps, but found no key there. The owner must have hidden the back door key in one of the cans. A stick snapped toward the front of the house. I picked up the first coffee can, groping inside. Nothing. I tossed it and moved on to the next. A crunch of snow froze me for a second. Masochistic curiosity begged for me to peek around the corner of the house. Do you want to die? I asked myself, checking another can. Maybe. Maybe that's the answer. A few seconds later, no, it's not. I searched another can. Still nothing. Footsteps slinked along the side of the house. Oh, please, come on. Diving my hand into the next can, my fingernails curled around a key nestled in a soup of mud and slushy water at the bottom. I was at the back door in seconds, plunging the key into the lock, my breath rolling into the night air in anxious puffs. As the heavy footfalls reached the corner, I shouldered my way through the door and shoved it closed behind me. The house was stifling and dark, the fire in the wood stove roaring. I rested my back against the door, listening through the wood. A coffee tin rattled against a few others, and I held my breath. The boards on the stairs creaked slowly. Though I desperately wanted to move away from the door, I couldn't. Whoever was out there was right on the other side, as if they knew exactly where I was. For a few moments, I thought I heard breathing. So that's from that book. And now I'm going to share a section from the sequel, which is coming out in August, which is The Wild Fall. I will be reading from chapter 7, and this takes place 10 years in the future after the first book. Liz is now traveling with a group of people, still in New England, trying to survive around the woods that have taken over most of the world. And they've been out on a supply run looking for a new place to settle with their group. So they're on their way back now. We were 3 hours into our walk back when I noticed the silence. It had happened gradually, which is why I didn't catch on until it was too late. There'd been the distant sound of chirping birds, along with a slightly cool gust of wind. The guys were having a disagreement behind me about which of their favorite 80s bands was the best. Depeche Mode, Metallica, or New Order. I raised a fist, a signal that they all recognized to mean shut up. Standing there on the open road, surrounded by sudden silence in the middle of the day, felt silly. The birds had gone silent. The wind had died. Worst of all, those clouds we thought we'd left far behind were gathering ahead of us. Sans growled it behind me, the dog. I glanced back over my shoulder at her. She was turned toward the field on our right and the forest behind it. It was dark inside, as though the light couldn't penetrate it. Hank approached, keeping his voice low. We should move, now. Let's go, I gestured, never letting my sights leave the tree line. We quickened our pace, which was difficult with all the new weight we'd carried. Our backpacks were flush with canned goods, apples, medical supplies, and water. We hadn't found any fuel, but I was starting to feel better about that. We didn't need the extra weight now. Sans, who toted a small pack filled with some veterinary tools and medicine, was now also keeping the woods in her vision fully, jaunting along almost sideways as John held her leash. I don't like this. I don't like this, Ash chanted as he upped his pace to a steady jog. We stayed running on and off for a solid 20 minutes. The backpack straps on my shoulders chafed, and I was overheating in my flannel jacket. As we moved away from the field and the trees, slowly filled in the sides of the road, I noticed our sun was being covered by those menacing storm clouds. We were walking right into growing darkness. We're not far off now, I said. I'm not sure if I was trying to comfort them or myself. I'd marked the car on our GPS. It was less than an hour away, closer if we sped up. Not sure we should keep going, Hank said. We should find shelter. I didn't stop. It's a bit further. We kept pace. Another 10 minutes passed. Rain speckled the road in front of us. The first icy drops were like being yanked out of a possession. I'd focused so hard on moving forward, I almost forgot how much space we still had to travel. We were still 30 minutes out, and the sun was blocked now. Noises sprung up on our right, the depth in the forest growing and growing. Bushes thrashed deep inside. The ominous crackling of sticks ahead of and behind us sent my heart thumping. Sans had gone into full aggressive stance, her hackles raised and teeth bared. She barked at the thicket, and John had to pull her along to get her to keep moving. We have a plan? Ash asked, his shirt turning dark with each raindrop. I stared ahead at the road. Going any further was suicide. As much as I wanted to get back into the car, there was a real possibility it wasn't there anymore. The woods could move in on a whim, and did so randomly. We would have to find a way around. We had to make a break for it. Into the field, I said, gesturing to our left. There was a large cornfield there with a barn beyond it. We fled the road, skirting an embankment, and climbed over a wooden fence. There was still an old tin sign posted there that read, "Keep out." I took Sans leash while John hopped the fence. I glanced at the road and felt my oxygen leave me. The trees were moving forward, the darkness following. The sound was like the earth breaking apart, my ears hurting. It was so loud. "Run!" I yelled at the top of my lungs. We turned and fled into the corn. The stalks blanketed my vision on all sides, the leaves scratching and scraping at my neck and my hands as I blazed my own path through them. Every time I'd break out into a new row, I'd look from side to side. I'd noticed Ash's foot disappearing into the next row, and John emerging next to me as I plunged into the next one. Sans yanked on a leash ahead of me, and I let myself be pulled. My arm felt as though it was going to fall off. The earth-shattering cacophony grew louder. A growing chill behind me snatched at me. I pushed my legs harder, faster. My lungs burned and screamed for air. I burst into the new row. There, I'd seen an arm. I don't know whose. Into the next row. More dry leaves hit my cheeks. One caught me in the eye. The roof of the barn bobbed into view ahead of me. Sans yanked me out into the tall grass, momentum never faltering. I glanced around me even as we came to another wooden fence. Sans scooted under and kept going. I hit the fence dead on, and my grip faltered on her leash. Someone grabbed me from under my arms and hauled me from where I'd fallen. I saw Hank's eyes briefly as I stumbled over the wooden fence and turned to help him. My hands closed around his wrists as he put his boot on the fence plank. Behind him, the world was a blur of flying grass. Like being caught inside a tornado, I couldn't tell which way we'd come from. I pulled, and Hank and I tumbled into the grass. I scrambled to my feet, my boots slipping on the muddy earth, and ran for the barn. John reached the door and yanked on it. It wasn't opening. It was locked. Ash ran in from the right and kicked the door. It cracked under the sudden force and caved in. Both ran inside. At the door, I turned around, hoping to see Sans somewhere in the ensuing pandemonium. She stood close to the fence, barking at the approaching chaos. Hank had gone to grab her. "Hank!" I shouted. It was almost on top of him. Hank lugged Sans into his arms as she wildly protested, still snarling and barking. He wasn't going to make it. I ran toward him. Hank shouted something at me, something I couldn't hear over the grinding earth and insane wind. And then he was gone. And that's it. So if you want to know what happens, you can pre-order the book. It comes out in August.
Wow. Both of those, that was crazy. Okay. Let me get my heart rate down. Of course, this was all done intentionally to have you and Gary come on and talk about scary things in the woods. No, but it's kind of cool. My parents took me backpacking when I was 2.5, and I've been out in the woods ever since then. And I know Gary's been doing Boy Scout camping and such like that. And Kat, I have a feeling that you spend a little time in the outdoors, considering what your daytime job is as well.
Yes. Yes, and you know that. I work at a sporting goods store and have for the last 16 years. So that's, I love being in the woods. I love being out in nature. And, I grew up in Mid-Coast Maine. So there's plenty of mountains and forests and things to hike around in and discover.
Yeah. Well, with luck, they're not sneaking up on you, but yeah. Wow.
No.
Yeah, that's crazy. So how does that influence the way you think about these stories? The fact that you've been out there, because your story and Gary's story both had a really great sense of what it's like in the woods. He was talking about sensory stuff, but how does that affect what you're writing?
So I'm kind of pulling from a different kind of woods when I'm writing these stories, because the woods in Maine and the woods that I grew up in have been a really beautiful, lovely place, and the woods that I'm writing are more inspired by a kind of limbo realm, like a purgatory kind of realm. So they're dark, they're ominous, they have a world inside them that is completely unpredictable, and the things inside them are unpredictable. And yeah, so they're not related, I guess.
Okay.
I'm
That's
taking a
cool.
more fantastical look at them.
Yeah. Well, one of the things he did also with these two readings is juxtapose the first one to me, the threat is what appears to be a person, and in the second one, it ain't a person anymore. So that's very cool. Um, eh, have you gotten any feedback about the dog?
Oh,
It-
about about what
about Sam?
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, what's really funny is my editor was very concerned about the well-being of the dogs when I
Mhm.
sent her the manuscript and she was reading through it. And there's 3 dogs in the
Uh-huh.
book. But it was always like, where's the dog in this scene, or what's happening to the dog? Is the dog okay?
Yes. Yes. What's going
Which
on?
is
Okay.
very concerning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because some people will relate to different parts of the story. Yeah. Well, Chris Ryan had a comment for us. Between you and Gary, I will never go near woods again. So there goes the retail sales. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Um, and so, uh, this is an interesting point that somebody made. Lots and lots of moose in the woods. Is that something that appears in your stories as well? Because that would be up in Maine, right?
So what's really hilarious about that comment is that I've lived in Maine my whole life and I've never seen a moose.
Oh, okay.
That's because you don't see them where I am. If you go
Yes.
to northern Maine, they're all over the place. But they're actually
Ah.
kind of in danger right now because of the crazy tick population. So there's
Oh.
this whole thing about how the ticks are killing all of the moose
Mhm.
in Maine. So it's a real problem, and we're trying
Because
to.
they're carrying a disease that they got from biting
Oh,
somebody else, and et cetera, as they
I
do.
mean, yeah, they have Lyme. They have all kinds of autoimmune, like not autoimmune, but like they have all kinds of crazy viruses and things. Like there are people I know who have been bit and now they can't eat meat.
Mhm. I've heard of this. Yeah.
Like it's crazy. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we make up scary things, but there's a lot of scary things out there in the real world as well. So, yeah.
Yes. But there is actually a moment in the new book where I do comment on the fact that 10 years in the future, there are not very many moose left because of how the ticks have gotten out of control. So.
Okay. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Well, Chris had a great comment here about raising the stakes. The woods taking over the world is a fresh horror. Most of the frightening details are so personal and so human. And so really well done and I agree with that. We sort of felt what it felt like to have this thing chasing you through there. So excellent job.
Thank you.
But he actually followed up with a question though. Which tree inspired you to scare us so?
Oh, well, I mean, gosh, I mean, when I think of those woods, they're creepy evergreen trees, really.
Okay.
But they're not, I don't know. They're not, how's the best way I can say this? I guess I looked at a lot of pictures of more temperate forests that,
Mhm.
where the trees were covered in like this very verdant moss. And I had
Mm.
this idea when I was writing the sequel. Okay, so the forest has kind of decayed inside, and that moss has become black, and so these trees are now just covered in this really gross black
Eh,
moss. So those were the images I was getting. These creepy black trees that are just
Yeah.
folding over the earth.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's an image. Yeah. Now I kind of want to go wash my hands. Yeah. Now, people talk about forest horror. Would you call the things you're writing forest horror or more post-apocalyptic, or how would you put that in
A
there?
little bit of all of it. I mean, it's definitely, the forest is an entity in itself. So I would definitely say that there's forest horror and dystopian apocalyptic
Mhm.
stuff going on, and supernatural horror going on because there's ghosts involved.
Mhm. Mhm. And yeah, it's really cool that those carry through. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. So, well, that's really intriguing. Now, I also happen to know that you do one of your own broadcasts, because I've listened to quite a few of them and enjoyed them quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I met Zach up at AuthorCon. I was like, wait, I know you. I saw you
Yep.
online. Can you tell me a little bit about your broadcast and what that
Sure.
is?
Yeah, so I host it's a winter series called Winter Views, and it goes from January through March. And I have a guest on each week, and we talk about a certain subgenre in horror, and it's usually the guest's choice about what we talk about. But we covered a lot of really cool ground this year, and I had some great guests. I saw Todd was in the audience, and Todd was my first guest this season. And Robatone was also a guest this season. Several others, and all of those broadcasts are available on YouTube for people to watch if you are interested.
Okay, and the name of it again is?
It is called Winter Views.
Okay. Here we go. I just put that in the chat. Very good. Well, that's terrific. Well, thank you so much for sharing your words and some of your insight into how you did this, and really appreciate it. We look forward to having you come back with everybody at the end, and we'll talk a little bit more about other things coming up.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. And I would like to introduce our third reader, John Hartness. John G. Hartness is a teller of tales, a righter of wrong, defender of ladies' virtues, and some people call him Maurice, for he speaks of the pompatus of love. He's the award-winning author of the urban fantasy series The Black Knight Chronicles, the Bubba the Monster Hunter comedic horror series, and Quincy Harker Demon Hunter dark fantasy series, and many other projects. He's also a cast member of the role-playing podcast Authors and Dragons, where a group of comedy, fantasy, and horror writers play Dungeons and Dragons very poorly. In 2016, John teamed up with several other publishing industry professionals to create Falstaff Books, a small press dedicated to publishing the best of genre fiction's misfit toys. Falstaff Books has since published over 250 titles, with authors ranging from first-timers to New York Times bestsellers, with no sign of slowing down anytime soon. In his copious free time, John enjoys long walks on the beach, rescuing kittens from trees, and playing Magic the Gathering, and his pronouns are he, him. You can find him online at johnhartness.com and falstaffbooks.com. John?
Well, hey there. First, I just want to say this is all Gary's fault. What's about to happen to you is his fault. He got this awesome, creepy Bigfoot story to kick us off, and I thought that we should come full circle and finish with a Bigfoot story, but one that's very, very different. So this is a scene from book 2 of the Bubba the Monster Hunter series, where Bubba has to fight a Sasquatch to save a family of good Bigfoot's feats from a bad Bigfoot named Clagtin. And you can pick up Bubba the Monster Hunter anywhere books are sold. And this is what has affectionately come to be referred to as that naked Sasquatch scene. When I was bare to the waist, I stepped forward into the circle of Bigfoots, and rolled my head from side to side. My neck made some scary popping noises left over from college football, and I looked across the bare patch of dirt at Clagtin. He was huge. I mean, Sasquatch kind of implies a big mother, but this dude was big even for Bigfoot. It was like Chewbacca mated with the ultimate warrior, and out comes something that was half Tasmanian devil and half grizzly bear, and all pissed off. "We fight without clothes, stupid man," my furry opponent yelled across the ring. "Unless you got a mouse in your pocket, I don't see no we over yonder, 'cause I'm keeping my damn breeches and shoes on. You might be used to running bare ass through the woods, but I ain't giving you another advantage just 'cause I was brought up civilized." "To use the loosest possible definition of civilization," Skeeter muttered over our comms, I snatched the Bluetooth out of my ear and tossed it back to land next to my shirt. I didn't need the distraction of Skeeter's commentary while I was trying to keep from getting absolutely friggin' destroyed. Clagteen must have decided that enough talking was definitely enough, because he lowered his head and charged me. He was like something out of the legends, and not the ones about unicorns and butterflies, neither. I sidestepped him pretty easily and gave him a swift kick in the upper thigh as he ran past. He let out a yelp and turned on me a whole lot faster than I expected. I barely ducked under this big looping left paw. I dodged to the left as his other fist came swinging up past my ear in an uppercut that would have broken my jaw if it had landed, and I found myself on one knee right in front of his waist. It wasn't my proudest moment in a fight, but I've always said, if you can't win clean, then fight dirty. So I lashed out with my right fist and nailed the Sasquatch right in his ginormous balls. I hit him as hard as I could right in the jewels, and I think I felt one squish under my fist. All the breath went out of Clagteen, and he dropped to both knees in a huge puff of dust. I stood up, teed off on his head like Adam Vinatieri in the fourth quarter, and kicked the nasty SOB in the jaw as hard as I could. I heard a snap as Clagteen's jaw broke, and he actually flew all the way back up to his feet before collapsing flat on his back, looking up at the stars cross-eyed. I turned and mugged for the crowd for a few long seconds, holding my hands above my head and jumping up and down till I caught sight of Barry gesticulating wildly in the back of the crowd of Sasquatch. After a second or two, I got over being proud of being able to tell him apart from the other Bigfoots, and I stopped celebrating. What's the matter, Barry? You act like he ain't out, is he? Barry shook his head. Right about the same time, a sledgehammer hit me between the shoulder blades. I splayed out face first in the dirt and then immediately tried to cover up as more boulders started bouncing off my back, ribs, and shoulders. I rolled over trying to keep my face covered and realized that all those huge rocks were Clagteen's fists, and all I'd done by breaking his jaw was made him mad. He straddled me in a full mount, moving right into a picture perfect ground and pound, except there was no ref to save me if he knocked me out. There was no padded ring. We weren't getting paid. There were no TV cameras, and he was a 400-pound naked Sasquatch rattling my waist. There were so many things wrong with my situation, I couldn't even begin to list them all. After about 10 seconds of getting the ever-loving crap pounded out of me, I decided to play dead. It wasn't much of a ploy since I could barely hold my arms up, and more, I was pretty sure at least 3 ribs were broken, and it felt like I had another concussion. Clagteen saw my guard drop a little and took the bait. He sat up on his knees to get a better leverage and reared back for a killing blow right between my eyes. That's when I did something I never thought I'd do in all my days. I grabbed Clagteen's schlong and pulled. I yanked on that Sasquatch wiener like it was the last lifeline on the Titanic. I pulled that ding-a-ling like I was Quasimodo ringing every damn bell in Notre Dame. I tweaked that twanger like I was in a tug-of-war against Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, and half a dozen elephants. It was the most uncomfortable thing I'd ever felt, and I've been stabbed, burnt, beat by a troll, and kissed by Mary Sue Jenkins under the bleachers at a middle school football game. His woolly bat was thick and rubbery, like all those nature shows say boa constrictors feel, but with more hair on it. And when I latched onto that Johnson and pulled with every ounce of my remaining strength, Clagteen's eyes bugged out like a wolf in a Tex Avery cartoon. He tried to stand up and back away from me, but I was latched on like a lamprey, and all he did by standing was pull me to my feet. And there is no way having 350 pounds of bleeding redneck dangling from your wang doodle feels good. Let go of me, Clagteen screamed, and his breath of a million dead things and no crest almost made my beard fall out. But I gave his gherkin a quick jerk upwards, and he slammed his mouth shut and stood up on tippy toes, trying to relieve some of the tension. I scrambled all the way to my feet, never letting go of his hairy hammer. Now, let's talk about this, I said, trying very hard not to only look in his eyes and ignore what was in my hand. We got two options here. One is you surrender and declare me the Chiron core. I was probably proud of myself out of all proportion for remembering what the hell the Bigfoot word for boss man was. Or we go with option number two. What is option number two? Clagteen asked, although the words were muffled on account of his broken jaw and the fact that his voice was pitched a full octave higher than normal, thanks to me yanking his 11th finger sideways anytime he looked at me wrong. I don't think you'd like option number two. Option number two is I yank your little shaggy savage here right off by the roots and turn it into a walking stick like they do bull's peckers at that big-ass flea market in South Carolina. Then I leave you to bleed to death, dickless and disgraced in Lower Dam, Alabama stand, and nobody wants to die in the suburbs of Mobile, Alabama. Clagteen moved in close to me, and I tightened my grip on his abominable snowman hood. He winced, but knelt in front of me. At least he tried to kneel, but I was still holding on to his one-eyed wrinkle beast, so that put a little hitch in his giddy-up. Anyhow, he knelt down as best he could and mumbled something. What? I couldn't hear you, I said. I dropped his pecker and knelt down, hoping it wasn't all a ruse just to get me to drop his dingus so he could kill me. I surrender, he muttered again, his voice back to its normal range and only marred by his broken jaw. Clagteen surrender. Bubba is new Chiron core. I raised my hands in a real victory this time, and Barry ran over to give me a huge bear hug, lifting me clean off my feet in his enthusiasm. I usually would have made some smart-ass and half homophobic joke about gay monsters, but since I was the one with more than a handful of brown bushy behemoth not 2 minutes before, I let it go. This time. And that is Bubba the Monster Hunter. The Hey Y'all Watch This portion of the show.
John, thank you. I think you just hit like a record number of Galactic Terrors firsts with that reading. And I have questions, so many questions.
I just want to say now everybody knows why we put John last, because nobody wants to read after that. How do you follow that?
I
We'll
did
have to be late enough that all the kids are in bed.
I did a group reading one time, and they made me go first.
Oh, maybe not the best idea.
Showed them that was a mistake.
Be careful what you ask for. Yes, yes.
Well, all right. So this is a question. It's not directly related to Bigfoot, but we're going to come back to that. But what did I just do there? There we go. Okay. I have wondered for a long time, and since you put it in your bio, I'm going to ask you, what exactly is a pompatus?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay. There you go.
Steve Miller did a lot of drugs back when he was writing that song, and I looked it up one time.
Yeah. And could you find anything? I couldn't find anything.
Also did a significant number of illicit substances in my youth, so I don't remember what I learned. Okay. I am not in Steve Miller's league, but I also do not have a short-term memory. So.
Well, when I saw the bio, I was just tickled because down at AuthorCon we had Maurice Broaddus there, so it's like,
yes.
Yes.
Oh, we're crossing the streams here. That could be bad. Yeah.
I am not Maurice Broaddus, although I would happily play him on TV, but he's way better dressed than me.
Well, see, that also led to one of my questions that I was wondering. I'm quite certain that this has been film optioned multiple times, your story, right? Because clearly that would be a good children's movie. Yeah.
There is an producer that I'm working with to adapt Bubba, but so far it's real indie and not a whole lot of money not a whole lot of money sitting around. So if anybody knows any rich people who are really, really twisted, send them my way.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy needs new shoes.
Well, we do have. I am so tempted to ask another question about how much research was done, but yeah,
I
maybe not.
can't tell you.
No,
I
no,
could tell you, but I'd have to send you
not
out
on.
into Gary's woods, not my woods.
And excellent cat wrangling, by the way. With you're talking about furry beasts, and the feline appears. So
I knew that one of them, that was Gandalf, by the way. I
Okay.
have 3. I knew one of them would make an appearance because there's a video call happening, so there must be a cat.
Exactly.
well, it's not a real one unless we have a live critter on. That's quite
And
true.
there we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that someone somewhere needs to start a new award category just so that you can get an award for the most creative use of Quasimodo as a metaphor.
Ooh.
Cool. Well,
think
if you know
that's the
anybody on
one
the
that-
Stoker committee, Jim, that
Right.
that's the thing. Yeah.
One of
but
my dreams is to do a group reading with me, Rick Gualtieri, and Jeff Strand one of these days.
Yes, I was about to say it is quite clear to me now why you were good friends with Rick Gualtieri. Yeah.
Yes.
One of my Jersey buddies. Yeah.
That's
So,
great.
That's fun. And Jeff as well. Yeah.
Well, Jeff
I
has
was
his
game for
own
that.
Bigfoot novel, Dweller.
Yeah.
That
His is fewer dingus jokes in his.
Well, yeah.
which could go either way. Knowing Jeff, he might out dingus joke you. He might not.
It depends on the book.
He didn't need to use them because he knew John had them well in hand. So really, it's all fine.
Literally.
Yeah. Cool.
So I guess I just want to talk Bigfoot for a minute because it was Carol was joking and you were talking about bringing it full circle and this was totally spontaneous for the audience just to know. We didn't really send out the memo that tonight is Bigfoot and the Woods night on Galactic Terrors. So this just kind of came together.
Oh yeah, I was going to read from Quincy Harker. I was going to read the opening for the Quincy Harker series, and then I was like, well, Gary's reading Bigfoot, and then Kat's reading creepy woods stuff, and I was like, I got woods. Let's go.
That's fun.
And now, so your approach to Bigfoot though seems fundamentally different than Gary's. Gary's like, well, we're not going to completely spoil the mystery. Bigfoot is here, but we're not going to get too up close and personal. I can't imagine getting more up close and personal than you did with Bigfoot.
Yeah. I don't remember where that story came from because that was Bubba Volume 2 that came out in 2014, and I'm working on Bubba Volume 6 now, which is will be a collection of 4 novellas. So it's been a long time and a whole lot of books between then and now. So I don't really remember where that one came from and why I decided that we should beat Bigfoot's junk. But it has done me well for readings as a rule.
Well, tell us a bit more about Bubba. So this is a series character.
Yeah. Bubba the Monster Hunter was the second series that I started. I started with the Black Knight Chronicles, which is a light vampire series. I typically call it light urban fantasy. Some people have called it comedy horror. Somewhere around there's a little award that somebody gave me for best horror novel, and that's when I was like, oh, well, I didn't know I wrote a horror novel. But thanks for the little shiny thing. That's awesome. So when I left my day job, I needed to produce faster than my publisher could publish. So I started self-publishing the Bubba books and just kept going. And over the year, Bubba he's an amalgam of several people I knew in real life and a whole plethora of people I grew up with in rural South Carolina. But physically, he's modeled on some people that I know in real life. Not me, for the record. Bubba is 6.5 feet tall, long ponytail, ZZ top level beard, and full sleeve tattoos. And while I'm a little inked up, I'm not near Bubba level of tattoos, and I've never had long enough hair, and I'm not that tall, and we won't discuss what I have and currently weigh.
No, that's
But it's
not a
not
prerequisite.
300. It's no longer 350 pounds. So Bubba's family business was hunting monsters. He is the official Southeastern Regional Monster Hunter for the Holy Roman Catholic Church. Because I thought that would be funny. He's not Catholic.
See, he's just working on contract.
Yeah, and
speculation.
that presupposes that there are other regional monster hunters.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started Falstaff Books, being an old comic book nerd, I decided I should expand the Bubba universe to other writers and let other people play in my sandbox. So I drafted folks like Gail Z. Martin, who's done dozens of epic and urban fantasy novels, Eric Asher, who's done a pile of urban fantasy, J.D. Blackrose, who at the time was a very new writer and has subsequently gotten published by several different presses. The work most of your audience will likely be familiar with is the Jewish Book of Horror. I saw a tables at AuthorCon with selling that anthology, and JD has a story in there. So I invited all of them to pick regions that they know well and create the regional monster hunter for their part of the world. So Eric lives in St. Louis, so he writes the Missouri Monsters. Gail and her husband Larry grew up in Pennsylvania, and so they write Pennsyltucky Monsters. And JD lives in Cleveland, so she has perhaps the greatest departure because she's in a city of Cleveland, and her character is a Jewish mother of 3 in the Cleveland suburbs hunting monsters for the Catholic Church. There are many conversations with her rabbi about this. So
you're crossing the streams again. Come on.
Yes.
It could be bad.
Well, that's great. And so has Bubba developed a following?
Oh yeah, Bubba is my second best-selling series behind the Quincy Harker books. I tell people that Harker pays my mortgage, but Bubba pays the car payment and everything else. So
well, that's nice of Bubba. You know.
It is. It's good because otherwise I wouldn't feed him.
I hate to think what would happen if you didn't. Yeah.
Well, you just heard some of what might happen.
Yeah. I'm making a mental note to never get into a fight with you, John, if that's how you think.
I'm a lover, not a fighter. So if I'm gonna have to, it's gonna be quick and it's gonna be dirty.
Oh wow.
That's it.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Wow.
Cool.
So I don't see any other questions from the audience. Lots of great comments.
Amused commentary.
Funny.
Yes.
This is good. I'm assuming we all know what this is talking about. So many new names for that.
That was the goal. That was the whole gimmick of that story, was to see how many euphemisms that I had never used before I could work into one couple of page fight scene.
And there you go, folks. Galactic Terrors is not only entertaining, but educational.
Right.
Well, you've got to improve your SAT word count. I mean,
Exactly.
clearly those are all going to be on there. Yeah.
They better be.
So, why don't we ask Gary and Catherine to come back on screen with us, and we can all chat a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Here comes Gary and Catherine. Welcome back.
Hey, gang.
So there we all were down in Virginia, and some of us came from the north to go south, and John came from the south to go north, to get there and stuff. So we met in the middle at AuthorCon, and who knew we'd be crossing so many different types of woods and forests and creatures,
Well,
Yeah,
as Kat was reading, I went on and bought her first book, and I noticed that Kat Scully blurbed your book. And I still owe her a blurb for one of her books. So there's a little bit of
Nice.
a crossover in our Venn diagram.
That's it.
Yeah.
Except she actually did her job, and I got busy and
You didn't do it yet, John. That's the answer.
right.
Yeah.
She's not done writing, so I can
Yeah.
work something.
But
Yeah.
I have a question for Catherine, connoisseur of coffee.
Oh yeah.
What is your favorite? Can you recommend a really good coffee or your favorite coffee?
Oh, so I think my favorite, it's really there's a Pete's Coffee is the brand, and they make a blend called Major Dickinson's Blend, and it's just really good. It's nice and dark, it's rich, it's got a little bit of a tang to it, but
Okay, Major
Yeah,
Dickinson's
it's
blend
great.
from Pete's Coffee. Very good.
Great.
I'll have to try that out. I am a coffee. I don't know if I'm quite a connoisseur, but I am a caffeine-driven consumer.
So, Kat, you like your coffee like your horror writer's heart, dark and rich. Yeah.
yes, I do.
With a
Yeah.
little tang.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gary-
I know.
That's
Sorry, I
fun.
just saw a comment there. Somebody said Major Who Now in the
Yes. Well, it would be in keeping with the whole rest of this. Yeah. So, Gary, I'm curious to know about the cover that you have for the Thing in the Woods. Is like so cool and so creepy. How did you get this cover?
The Crossroad Press had reissued my first two books, so I went with them for The Thing in the Woods. And what always excites me is that moment where they go, "What do you want on the cover?" And
Nice that they ask. Yeah.
there's always a 50-50 that, even though I use simple words, it may not look anything like I thought. So I said what I wanted. And they sent the cover and they said, well, what we did something different. We did like a kind of painted wash over the image. And I'm like, that's perfect. That is absolutely perfect.
Yeah. It's cool. It's very striking. Yeah.
I really, really love what they did.
Cool.
Very cool. What was your reaction to John's take on Bigfoot, Gary?
I was stunned, speechless. I wonder. And I really thought, like, well, I'm glad somebody did that because I probably would not.
Well, you're still involved with Boy Scouts, and that accounts for some of my previous.
I got to be careful, right?
Yes, yes.
Well, it's definitely we ran the spectrum from violent Bigfoot, non-violent Bigfoot to violent Bigfoot.
Yes, that's quite true. Yeah. So we were all down at AuthorCon, which was very fun. And I didn't get to chat with as many people as I wanted to because, when you're sitting at a table or whatever, you don't get to see people except the ones that come by. So there were so many people there that were coming around, though, and making friends and buying books and all. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
So, we got to do something good for a good cause. And, people got to come around and learn about us as well. Did you get to meet some people you hadn't met before when you were down there? What?
It's actually rather funny because my friend Rich Dansky said, hey, you need to meet this guy, John Hartness. And so at one point, my table was right outside the dealer's room, which you think is the A spot, but they don't see my table. They see the dealer's room and the woman checking wristbands. And John came over and I said, Rich Dansky said I needed to talk to you, but I can't remember what it was I was supposed to talk to you about. And he pulls out his business card and it says publisher. I was like, oh, that's it. You're the publisher guy. Okay. And then he pointed me to somebody else.
That's right. I sent you to Carol's table that she was sharing with Rachel Brune,
right?
Because Rachel is the lead editor for our new horror imprint, Falstaff Dread.
And I was very excited about this moment. There's always that, I'm going to meet a new publisher. This is great. And so she says, well, pitch it to me. I said, now? And the last thing I was thinking of was, hey, let's go pitch a novel. And so she's like, sure. And I literally turned in a circle and went, you're going to love this. And so like halfway through, she said, so what's the main character's arc? And I'm like, it's funny you asked because I completely forgot to mention that when I was pitching the book. So let's back up a step or two.
Yeah.
But obviously, she was so impressed with me. She wants to see pieces of it. So thumbs up to that.
Oh, yeah. I've worked with Rachel for 6 or 7 years on various things. So that's very cool. So, Kat,
know,
did you get to any of the different panels or anything, or were you tied to your table the whole time? How did you make out?
I actually didn't get to go to any of the panels, and it was
Neither.
because I was just like terrified to leave my table in case somebody came by, and
Yes.
I should have really gone to one of them.
Well, the one thing I got to was Jim Chambers reading basically, and I went and did my reading, and that was it. So, but that was kind of fun. But yeah, we were there most of the time. But people just kept walking by. It was really a fun event. I also did the writers' workshop that they did before that, which was very cool. It was a great staff, a good group of people, and met some fun folks. Still in touch with. That's very cool. I had a good time there, so much enjoyed it. Yeah.
And you were very kind to come to my reading, Carol. It was 10:15 a.m. Sunday morning.
Yes, mine was 10:15 Saturday morning. So I figured if anybody came to mine, I should go to somebody else's. Yeah. No, it was great. It was very cool.
But I'd love to hear what we can look for from all of you coming up in the future. I know we've already talked about some of it and gotten some hints. Gary, how about you? Do you have anything on the horizon we can keep an eye out for?
A bit. So I probably shouldn't say this with John in the room because I don't want him to. I said to Rachel, it's in draft, right? So the first draft is done. The book is called The Miracle Child. And going back to a question earlier, I had the image of I saw a painting of a monster, and I said, "Wow, that would be really cool to use in my story." And I created an entire novel based around the monster, and then due to some interesting conversations, I changed the monster, but I decided what it is, and I went back to Polish mythology to pull a demon out. So it's
cool.
that. So I'm getting the first 3 chapters, and then off they're going to go with a cover letter and a short bio, and we'll see what Rachel says. I also met another publisher, and I have a dark fantasy alternate history novel that I want to send that way. I don't know if I should have said that with John in the room, but there it is.
That's okay. That's a different story. That's a different thing.
Yes, indeed.
We do a ton of alt history, so if that one doesn't fly,
you're next.
Yeah, hit me up.
He doesn't want to overwhelm you, John. Yeah.
Too late.
One book at a time.
Yeah. So, Catherine, you told us that the second one is coming out in August, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
The Wild Fall is coming out in August, and there is also going to be a short story that comes out around the same time that is from the villain's point of view in that book. I love making cross material, expanded universe stuff. So there's actually a lot of expanded universe books in that series that people can explore.
Yeah. Well, actually, we had one question from somebody who was technically unable to put a comment in for whatever reason on YouTube, and he wanted to know this thing with the trees and the forests going around, is it a worldwide effect? I mean, are there other groups in the world that are having this forest effect? That's what he was wondering.
Yes.
Okay. So that gives us lots of room to play. Oh, that'll be fun. All right.
I think we have some. Let's see. We have some covers to share. So this is the cover for The Wild Fall. That's the one that's forthcoming.
Yes. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. And this precedes it then, I think, The Wild Dark.
Yes. Yep.
And that was the first one you read from. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, great use of colors on these. Yeah, really gorgeous. And John, what do you have coming up? Book 47, 52, 90, 93? What?
Hut. I think that this identity theft, based very loosely on true events, is I think it's my 36th book.
Wow.
Cool.
I lose track because I publish things in so many different formats, short story collections, novellas, novella collections, novels. I have a story coming up in Unbreakable, the Joe Ledger anthology that Jonathan Mayberry and Brian Thomas Schmidt edited. And then I'm working on Bubba Season 6. I will finish that. I've got one novella that I'll probably finish next week, so it'll be out in a little bit. And then I'll have the second novella in the collection out around the end of the year. I'm writing Quincy Harker books 9 and 10 this year. And
Demon Hunter, yeah.
And the 9th and final novel in my Black Knight Chronicles series, I'll be writing that this year. I don't expect it to release until next year, though, which will put me somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 years late finishing out that contract.
Done is good, you know.
Well, you're still ahead of George R.R. Martin, so
I'm still ahead of my editor at that press, who's had a contract with another press since before she founded the company that I'm contracted with. So they know, they're never getting another book out of her. And she knows that that she is getting another book out of me.
Okay.
And then at Falstaff, we release we're averaging 2 to 3 books a month. So go to our website, sign up for our newsletter. There are lots of cat pictures in our newsletter.
Excellent.
And is Quincy Harker an ongoing series, open-ended series like Bubba?
Yes, it will go as long as people will buy them. As long as they're paying my living expenses, Harker and Bubba will keep going.
Cool.
So as long as people are buying, I'll keep writing.
Cool.
Great.
Please keep buying. I'm completely unsuited for a real job anymore.
Yes, isn't that the truth? And Jim, what about you? Do you have something on the horizon you can tell us about yet? Or
on the horizon, what do I have? I have a new collection of short stories coming out later this year. It isn't. It's official enough for me to say that, but not to share details just hopefully soon. Hopefully we'll have a cover soon. They are Lovecraftian cosmic horror stories set in the sort of the Nixport cycle of stories that I've been writing off and on for many years. And other than that, I've just had quite a few things published in the last month or so. Cemetery Dance 78 included a story of mine called They Listen that just came out in the last few weeks after quite
You mean this one?
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
With a really cool cover. Yep.
Yeah.
And I had a bunch of steampunk stories published in a handful of anthologies from eSpec Books.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Part
Danny.
of my Machinations Sundry steampunk series.
I did a couple of her anthos.
Yeah.
And Carol, I know you have some exciting news to share and perhaps a cover.
Yes, well, and I also have a story in one of those steampunk anthologies from eSpec, but the more recenter news is I have a story in the cosmic horror issue of Weird Tales 367, which is coming out in mid-May. So it's there's this really cool red guy with his horns sawed off on the front. I don't know what that's all about, but no. I'm very excited. I'm just so honored and thrilled to have a story in here with a bunch of fabulous authors listed in there. So I'm very excited. Yeah. So apparently that drops around mid-May.
Terrific.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Thanks for asking. Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming on and joining us. Our next episode is on the second Thursday of May, and that day is the 11th. And we have poet Stephanie Ellis and Stoker-nominated Cindy O'Quinn coming to us, and more folks as well.
Yes.
So looking forward to that.
And if you'd like to keep on top of what we're doing with Galactic Terrors and find out more about our authors who are reading, you can join our newsletter. We'll put that back up there. Mm-hmm. And of course, please like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, Facebook streaming, all of that stuff. Apparently, this is what keeps the internet going. The more you like and subscribe, the faster your download speeds will be. So please like and subscribe our channel and increase your downloads.
Yes, terrific.
And of course, none of that is true. I don't want to get in trouble with any kind of commission.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
Or bureau, but...
That's fun. Great. So thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate you coming in and chatting with us and sharing your words. And You know, who would have thought that we had so much overlap just from a bunch of people hanging out at AuthorCon, you know?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, thank you very much. It was great. The readings were wonderful, and we always enjoy chatting about sort of the ins and outs of our stories and of the writing process.
Thanks for
Very cool.
having me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Cool.
Thanks for inviting me last week.
Hey, you were sitting there right in front of the ballroom, man. What can I say?
You want to read? I said, sure. When? She's like, the 13th. I'm like, yeah, that's great. She's already walking away. And I'm going, wait, that's next week. Wait.
Yeah,
She's gone.
and it worked.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Carol and I
It's been a
both
year.
occasionally get schedule challenged.
Yeah, it's been a year. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
got
well.
2 more conventions in the next 2 weekends. So
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
I
Oh,
feel
wow.
you.
Yeah, and I got home from AuthorCon and had knee surgery a day and a half later. So yeah,
Oh, geez.
but all was doing well. All was doing fine. So yeah, so good news that we had all you join us. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
all of you in the audience for coming out tonight. And we hope
Thanks,
we'll see you
everybody.
next month and onward. Take care, everyone.